Welcome to the Builders of Authority podcast, a show committed to helping you build authority for your brand. In the realm of business and personal branding, authority stands as a cornerstone. Authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. So join us as we build something remarkable together. And now, here's your host, Adam McChesney.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Builders of Authority podcast. Quick reminder before we hop into today's episode that we are continuing to grow our Builders of Authority community online. Builders of Authority is committing to helping you become the authority in your industry with personal branding and business growth. We have our free Facebook group that you can join by typing in Builders of Authority into the search bar. In that group, there's daily content, weekly live trainings, and much more. We have our Builders of Authority Mastermind, which includes a private Facebook group, 2 live weekly trainings and sessions, and access to our personal branding course and more. One-to-one personal branding coaching and consulting is also available. Reach out to us at buildauthority.co or send me a DM on social media and let's have a conversation. Our next BOA live event is happening on Wednesday, June 26th here in downtown St. Louis. Tickets are on sale now, so go over to buildauthority.co/event to grab yours before it's too late. Today, we have another in-person episode, which I'm always excited about here at Half Coast Studios here in St. Louis, Missouri. This guest and I got connected on social media a while ago, but one of our mutual connections, Josh, who we were actually just talking about, recommended that we hop on a call. So we did that a couple months ago, and then I wanted to make sure that I got him in here on my podcast. There's so many different things that he was involved in and still involved in that we were kind of talking about right before that. So I don't want to steal his thunder. I'll let him dive into some of that stuff today. My guest today is Nathan Bush. Nathan, welcome to the show.
What's up, Adam? How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Good. Yeah, I hear you talking about your event and all the good things you got going on, man. That's incredible.
I appreciate it.
We were just talking about the event business, and that thing it's a whole thing in and of itself, running events, isn't it?
It is. It's something that I didn't necessarily know everything behind the scenes once I signed up for throwing an event, but I learned quickly.
You know, it's interesting. A number of years ago, my wife and I, we were afforded a trip to Hawaii. I was working for an organization at the time. I helped grow from $2 million to over $20 million in revenue, and we did that in under 4 years. And
Wow.
So as part of that process, as we were growing, I got an award to be able to go to Hawaii. And like anybody that knows me knows that like I'm married up, and that's for you, honey. Like I'm married up. My wife's incredible.
That's awesome.
Anybody that also knows me knows that I'm deathly afraid of sharks.
Mm.
So here we are in this beautiful environment with the top business leaders in the world. I mean, this is it was Four Seasons Maui. So this is like the premier cream of the crop, top of the line hotel that you could possibly stay in. I was forever grateful. We did helicopter rides there. We did a whitewater rafting tour while we were there. One of the other crazy things that happened was my wife wanted me to get in the water. Now, again, I'm deathly afraid of sharks. So here we are. My wife's standing in the water. She's calling me in. I'm refusing to do so. But then I had a decision to make, right? Like I can either live or die. Probably going to die both ways. But either way, I went against my own better judgment. I went in the water. And here I am in the most beautiful environment, tropical location, top business leaders in the area. And I see this giant shadow come in front of me. And I absolutely, Adam, become the worst version of myself I ever thought possible. What I did, I'm not proud of. But what I did was I literally took my wife and physically put her between me and the shadow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And in that moment, I thought, I'm going to die 2 ways now.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I learned something tremendously from that. And that is that it is incredibly important, the environments that we're in and what environments we choose to be in. See, I know I'm not good inside the water, but I also know that outside of the water in business, I thrive. That's why things like BOA Live, your event that you have coming up, is so important for entrepreneurs and salespeople and anybody that is really around personal branding, that need that personal brand. Anybody in business needs a personal brand. And so if you don't attend that event, you're consistently outside of the right environments. Like I'll tell you this thing, my daughter was doing this study the other day in science, and she learned that the gravitational force on Earth is different than the gravitational force on Jupiter, right? And so what we find out is that the same mass, the same person in the Earth environment weighs significantly more on Jupiter if they were to be standing on Jupiter. So you're the same person, the same mass, but your weight is different. And that gravitational pull is like our environments, man. That's what bothers me the most, is that some people are in an Earth-style environment, and those things that are pulling them down okay, they can every once in a while get out of them. But on a Jupiter situation, it is critical that you get to something like BOA Live. Like, because you're outside of your comfort zone, you're growing, you're developing, you're becoming a better version of yourself, and you're supported by a community of other people that want to see that for you. Where else can you be in an environment that's protected like that helps you constantly focus on the goals that you want to achieve for your life, that helps you become that better version of yourself so you're not like me in the water?
Yeah, well, that's a great story with a lot of commonalities, I think, that I can relate to in different aspects of my life where I've been outside the environment and I wanted to be in the environment, but like things held me back, right? And I think a lot of people have similar stories. So I appreciate you sharing that. So who's Nathan Bush?
Yeah, great question. So I am what's considered a strategic growth facilitator. Have you ever heard that term before?
Not until you told it to me a couple months ago when we chatted.
I thought I made it up. Like, there's coaches out there, there's mentors out there, there are programs, training programs out there. A strategic growth facilitator is kind of like those things, except for I do additional work. I help organizations grow and scale. So I have a business partner of mine. We have a property management business. We do third-party property management for small multifamily real estate investors, and we show them how they can achieve double-digit returns with institutional-style management. So that is the property management business. But as part of that, growing and scaling, we took that business from 24 doors under management when I started with my business partner. Now we have just under 200 9 months later. And so those rapid strategic growth skills, I put together in a book called The Caesar Method. And people will go on Amazon and they'll buy this book from me. Then they'll reach out to me and they'll be like, hey, Nathan, can you help me grow my business as well? And whether that's putting together a training program for their salespeople or specifically consulting on a marketing arrangement, or whether that is putting together like live interviews of their current customers and facilitating these testimonial style case studies online for them to use in their marketing. We do a variety of different things within that strategic growth facilitation method using the Caesar method that I wrote about.
Love it. What is the Caesar method?
Yeah, everybody wants to know, right? And so before I can get into like what the Caesar method specifically is, Adam, because it becomes a little bit complicated because it's layered on to what you're already doing.
Sure.
So what I write about in the first chapter of the book is the 5 steps to dominate your market. And so before you can get into the Caesar method, you first have to have a mission and values. See, I have an undergraduate degree in nonprofit management. I got a graduate degree in accounting. So it's kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. Yeah. One is values and mission, and one is caring for the bottom line. And so you have to have this concept of mission. People won't buy into just, I do insurance, or I'm a financial advisor, or, I do property management. You've got to have a mission where you're significantly changing a market or disrupting a market so that people can get behind that. But they're not going to get behind somebody who's disrupting a market with bad values. In my book, I write about the law of the mirror from John Maxwell, actually. And he says, in order to grow ourselves, we have to see value in ourselves first. And so you have to understand your core values. And so that mission and values is so critical because as you define those core values and you live those out, people see those and they want to come along with you. I can't tell you how many businesses that I've walked into that I've helped with the Caesar method that at first they didn't know who they were. They had no identity. And so I'm sure you can align with that with somebody that helps with personal brand, like company brand. You've got to have an identity. If you don't have an identity, guys, like I call you soulless. Yeah. You're without the spirit. And so that's the first step in the 5 steps to dominating your market. The second step in dominating your market, the 5 steps to dominating your market is you've got to understand your CAPSARs. These are your calls, your appointments, your presentations, your sales, your average sales price, and your referrals, right? You've got to define these core metrics for yourself. You need to know how many of these things that you're doing. How many outbound contacts are you making? How many appointments are you setting? Because before I can even layer in the Caesar method and teach you strategic frameworks that's going to grow these things, you got to have these things tracked and in place. So once you have your mission and values and you have your KPIs, we'll call them key performance indicators defined, then you've got to have scripts. You've got to have assessments on what you're doing to fill in the gaps so you can actually fulfill that mission. You've got to have presentations So you got to know what that presentation looks like at different areas, whether it's a referral presentation or you're trying to acquire a new client or you're trying to resell an existing client. You got to have these presentations defined. And then you got to have an offer for each one of those areas as well. And so if you don't have those things in place, again, the Caesar method is not going to help you. It's only going to help you once you, again, define your mission and values, you build out your CAPSARs, you have those 4 core elements in place. You also get a bank of testimonials. You've got to have clients that are singing your praises already. If you don't have clients that are singing your praise, let's say you're going out to get your first client, you don't even know what you're doing at that point. And so for me to layer in a strategic growth method for you, you just need to start growing in general. You need to find that customer base. And then lastly, you got to have systems at scale, training systems at scale, recruiting systems at scale. And if you have those things, then we can talk Caesar method. But those 5 core items are what it takes in order to dominate a market before we can even get into how do we now start scaling that out.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people struggle with that in the beginning is they want to go implement all the shiny object stuff. Not that that's a shiny object, but they want to go from 0 to 100. And they realize like you got to start walking before you run the marathon. You have to, have a foundation to a house before you start building on it. So that's kind of what you're talking about, right? With like the core values and the mission, and some of those foundational things before you implement everything.
Yeah, I mean, think about it from a personal brand standpoint, right? Like who you are speaks so much louder than what you do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it starts with that inside. It was interesting when I did my live event a couple weeks ago. People were like, "This guy's up there talking about core values at like a sales summit. Like, how do those two things go together?" And then the aha happened for people. They're like, "Nobody's gonna buy my product or service if they don't buy me first."
Yes. And that's like a lot of people ask me like, Adam, like, should I have a personal brand? Who needs a personal brand? What's a personal brand? I say, hey, everybody's already got a personal brand, whether you know it or not. It's what people think about you when you're not in the room. That could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, could be indifferent. Now, whether you choose to do anything with that is a completely different topic of conversation, but your business will grow and continue to grow based on how well you represent yourself. When you represent yourself, people do business with people, and then they buy your products or services as an after fact.
Absolutely. It's interesting with our property management business. I was doing a speaking presentation just a couple of days ago. And at the end of the presentation, there was the question and answer session where they asked the audience if they had any questions. And one person stood up and said, I don't have a question, but I do want to say that I went through Nathan's onboarding sales process. We decided not to choose his organization because when he put his budget together and showed us what our returns were going to be, he told us that it was better that we self-manage our property than for his organization to manage the property. We actually put the budget together, showed him what it would look like, and we were like, here's some tips, though, that you can do to increase your average rents. Here's some things that you can do to help grow your organization. That person also then said, we are actively looking for additional apartment communities to buy with Nathan's concepts in mind so that he can manage our properties going forward. And that kind of testimonial, you cannot buy that. That person stood up and said that about our organization, and I didn't even know it was coming. It wasn't a plant in the room. This was somebody that actually went through our process and cared, that I cared enough to tell them what actually was going on, because our company has core values. And those core values, I lead with them. Doing the right thing is a critical core value within our organization. Making sure you seek out the truth, whether it's from a tenant or a contractor, or whether you seek out the truth from an investor. You got to know what the facts are so that you can make rational decisions. We have core values around innovation and partnerships. Like we're going to partner with somebody in a third-party management situation. We're not going to be dictated to, and we're not going to dictate. We have to have this give-take relationship, just like you would a partner, just like a spouse. These things are critical because this is your baby. This is your investment that our organization is managing for you. Then, we also have the core value of the real estate investor versus the slumlord. We don't work with slumlords. And so if we find a client that's a slumlord, we'll kick them out. I could have significantly more units under management. But some people will pass the initial sniff test, but then aren't willing to do what it takes in order to do the right thing for other people. And we'll boot those people out of our organization as fast as we put them in there. And those are the types of things that I teach in the Caesar method, Adam. I teach people how to put that in place for their business.
It's powerful. So where did you learn a lot of this stuff? Was it just by your own experience? Was it from working for somebody else? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so back in 2008, man, you're taking me back. So I have the undergraduate degree and the graduate degree.
Mm.
And then I decided, well, that's not enough. In 2008, my father and I decided to invest significant sum of money, close to $20,000, to fly to New York and learn 3 days from one of the top finance guys in the entire country on how to set up a finance business, how to grow a finance business, and do a number of different things from a marketing standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first commitment to myself, where I made a decision that I was going to invest in myself and take action to learn from people who were better and further along than I was.
Yeah.
Then I invested in John Maxwell certification. It's close to, they'll tell you, certain prices and stuff, but by the time you fly to Florida, you take your family with you, you pay for the hotel room, you do all that, you're about $10,000 into your investment with John Maxwell to learn and become certified as a John Maxwell speaker, trainer, coach, and facilitator. And so that was another investment that I made in myself beyond just my regular degrees. Then I have thousands and thousands of books that I've read. People say I've read a bunch of books, but did you actually read the book? Like, you have a bunch of books sitting on your shelf at home, but did you actually know I've read these books? See, because I came from a 900 square foot house, and sometimes we had 7 people inside that home. I said, I'm never going back to that situation in my life where I can't afford to do the things I want to do, wear the clothes I want to wear, take the vacations I want to take. And so I continued to pour resource into myself, time, energy, effort, money, in order to help scale my understanding of how to grow businesses. And it helped me professionally when I was growing in my career, like I said, with a medical device organization going from 2 million to almost 20 million in revenue, implementing similar strategies that I had dissected and put into this book and program. It all came from the investment in myself, very similar to people who would join your BOA Live.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to make the investment, a couple $100 to go listen and learn from Adam and a number of other speakers. Like, guys, come on, you got to do it.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with all the things that you're saying right there. Why do you think people don't invest in themselves?
They don't believe in themselves, Adam. It's as simple as I can make it. You got to believe in yourself. You have to see value. See, people have tragedies that go on inside their life. They have things that happen to them when they're younger. They have psychological things that put barriers and borders and perimeters and boundaries in place that keep them from lifting themselves into the next level. I love what Ed Milet says. Every single family has the one. Mm-hmm. There's generations and generations and generations of poverty, and then there's the one. Why can't it be you? Mm-hmm. Why can't it be me? Why can't it be us to be the one in our family who makes the major difference, the major impact? Mm-hmm. It's interesting because as I work through a lot of the business stuff, a lot of these things are translatable as a parent to your child. Yep. And my daughter did martial arts all the way from she was 3.5, 4 years old, all the way until she was 9.5, 10. She took 3rd in the world with ATA martial arts taekwondo. Wow. Black belt, 9 and under category, 3rd in the world. Hand-to-hand combat. She went years never losing a match. Now, my daughter's incredibly talented, but she's not the fastest. She's not the quickest. What was it that separated my daughter and her ability to take 3rd in the world? It had to be something different than physical. And it was her mindset. Mm-hmm. And that's the one, right? If you can become that person for other people, you're now starting to recognize that you're the one that's making the shift, the impact, the change from that I don't see value in myself to seeing the value because you're adding it to other people. And that's why kids are so important and powerful. If you have children, like, if your kids are hellions, guess whose problem it is? Guess who was the designer of that hellion? If your kids are great kids, guess who did that too? Yeah. Right? That's the beauty of having children, is that you can see a direct reflection of your good, bad, and ugly right in front of you.
Right in front of you. Yeah, that's definitely accurate. So transitioning a little bit, I know we talked about like some of the foundational things. We talked about like building brands, different types of things. What would you say to someone that's like, hey, I don't necessarily know where to start in trying to identify what my core values are, so that way I can go build a brand?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially on a personal brand side, but even smaller businesses. Like I know I've worked primarily with a lot of startups or younger businesses. I know when I was getting started, I always said, "Oh, I'll go do the core values and the mission and stuff like later once we start to grow." Well, then when you start to grow, it becomes really difficult to go back and try to build the foundation.
Yeah, I think it's essentially the primary thing to do when you're starting your business is to have your mission and to have your core values.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I would say that you define your core values is number one, like what was your upbringing? What did you like and not like from your upbringing?
Mm.
What religious or spiritual focus do you have in your life?
Mm.
How does that play an impact on the way you make decisions right now?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it's important for you to ask others. If you don't know what your core values are, maybe sit down with somebody that you care about and say to them, like, hey, I'm really struggling to define my core values. What do you see are some core values that I hold that are important, that I display constantly? And your business is going to be a reflection of you. John Maxwell, in his book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, talks about the law of the lid.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, this is the first law of leadership, that your business will never outgrow you.
Mm-hmm.
You are the lid.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never be bigger on the outside than you are on the inside. So define those core values is critical. And it's so important that you do it because you're going to stop the growth of your business
Mm-hmm.
if you don't define what those core values are and then begin to live those out.
Mm-hmm. So I know you mentioned the law of the lid. We talked a little bit about environments, and obviously being in rooms, investing in yourself, stuff like BOA. What would you say if somebody's struggling right now? They're around the wrong people, right? And everybody says, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. How do you break through that and then go find your right group of people, for example?
Yeah, it's also like selecting the right clients.
Yeah, it is. Amen to that.
So, number one, you got to have some boundaries. Once you have your core values, people can't cross those values. You can't allow people to disrupt who you are.
Sure.
And so that has to become a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as simple sometimes of just putting a little distance between you and some of the challenges that you see going on. I'm not saying just don't ever go around certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Like the premise that you can just, what is it, cut fish and cut bait? Like I don't think it works like that. Not when you're dealing with relationships and people.
Yeah.
I don't think the cold turkey approach, unless you're just like extremely self-disciplined and you've got it all together already and you've already made major changes in your life, can you do some of the things that I've seen other gurus and experts and people talk about in this world? I think it starts with just putting a little bit of distance. Instead of seeing that person every day, maybe you can put 2 or 3 days in between that. Maybe you can put some distance between they're calling you. You don't have to take that call right now.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself some space and opportunity to define who you are and put some boundaries in place. When people start to intrude on your personal or your own core values, it's important that you remind them of your core value. So, hey, John, I appreciate that you're asking me to go out drinking this weekend. I have a core value that's doing the right thing. I don't really feel like going out drinking this weekend is the right thing anymore. Wow. Imagine how much better you feel when you define that core value, set that boundary for that client or that relationship or that person so that they know who you are and who they're doing business with. Now I can ask for a little bit more money next time I go out and try to sell my service.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think the boundary piece, both on the personal and the business side, is one thing that most people don't have. Like they might say or tell themselves that they have it, but the minute a client shows up willing to pay them something, they know that it's probably not the right client. And I've been there myself, but you need the money, right? And so every time I've taken the money when I shouldn't have, I've always regretted it.
Yeah.
It's a revolving door.
That's because money is the window to our soul. And where you put your money and your time is where your heart is. And so if you just take the money for money's sake, your heart's not in that client.
Yeah.
And the client can feel that.
Yeah.
And you can feel it. And so I find it to be extremely critical. I don't know how many salespeople make this mistake of just selling anybody because they're sitting in front of them. You're a crook and a criminal if you do that.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to take the time to assess the need, to
Mm-hmm.
understand if there's a gap between where they're at and what your product or service can do,
Mm.
and then present the proper solution to them at the proper price. I ask people this all the time. Would you rather overpay for property management or underpay for property
Mm-hmm.
management?
Yeah, you'd rather overpay.
I'd rather just pay what it's
Well,
supposed to
yeah,
be,
that's
right?
true.
And
But
so,
yeah,
trick question.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
But it's critical that you understand that there's value in the service we provide. So we underwrite
Mhm.
every transaction whenever we're third party managing for other people to ensure that the other client is getting the resources, the time, and the energy that we need in order to commit to that relationship.
Mm. Mm. Well, and I think the way that you're going about it, especially, I know a lot of people that are in the real estate space and they have horror stories left and right. So, how have you, I know you mentioned innovation being one of your core values. How has innovation played a role in what you're doing in your business?
Yeah. So, number one, innovative. Just if you think about just this conversation that we're having, I'm a strategic growth facilitator. I do some work for strategic growth facilitation with a number of different clients. Yet, I also have this business that I'm working. It's innovative to have an approach where you're doing third party management and consulting, training,
Mhm.
coaching, mentoring other organizations and people one on one. So that's innovative in and of itself because I have now outside case studies that I can bring back to the business
Mm.
of people that I've worked with and say, hey, maybe we're doing this incorrectly. We need to fix this area over here of our business.
Mm.
Right. The second thing that I would say about innovation is that we use software platforms where we integrate those platforms with API coding.
Mm.
And so because we integrate the different software programs, they talk to each other, and I need significantly less staff than the next guy in order to be able to accomplish the same things. I mean, with the advent of things like ChatGPT and the advent of a number of different AI programs that are out there, the ability to have automated follow-up with specific tenants where I don't have to have somebody live initially initiate that conversation, but it can be initiated via text message and then followed up by a live person.
Mm.
These things are all ways that you can innovate and streamline just the property management business of itself, much less for the real estate investor, and help them save costs.
Sure. Yeah, I think the people that are not at least open to and willing to adapt to the technology, some of the stuff with AI and Chat GPT are going to be the ones that ultimately are left behind.
Dude, I'm going to tell you a secret. I embrace the heck out of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like, if I need to write an email to somebody on my team, I'm like, write me an HR approved email.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can friggin' type in almost anything in there, and it's going to give you 70 to 80% of what you need, and you go fix it up a little bit
Yep.
and go do it. So talk to me a little bit about like what you're excited about in the future. Like, what are you working on? Where are you heading? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm most excited about is my YouTube channel.
Okay.
I've been continuing to try to grow my audience on my YouTube channel. If you were to go there right now, you would see I have 52 subscribers. Big deal, 52. Maybe you can make it 53 if you just go over to
Yeah.
Nathan Bush
We'll
on
put
YouTube
that-
and check me
We'll
out.
put it in the show notes.
But specifically, I'm excited about growing my YouTube channel because here's why. It's a platform that helps me connect with people and demonstrate a level of expertise in the real estate market. And when they share a video or they like a video or they comment on a video, it sends a message to other people about my level of expertise inside of the real estate industry specifically.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I'm excited about is my newsletter. So if people headed over to www.nathanbushmba.com, that's NATHANBUSHMBA.com/subscribe, they can subscribe to my newsletter. And so in that, whenever I have a new YouTube video that comes out, I will send them the YouTube video so that they can get the same education and information. If you're a real estate investor, you're a property manager, you're in sales or marketing, you're going to get benefit out of heading over to my YouTube channel.
Love it. Any last pieces of advice for the audience as you're like, well, I wish we would have went over this to provide some value?
Guys, like I told you, I married up. My wife is incredibly intelligent. She's got a doctorate in leadership, and she wrote a book called The Coin System. And in that, she shows how to transfer your family values to your children. I would tell you that the last bit of advice that I have is that who you are speaks so loudly that nobody can actually see what you're doing. You have to be the right kind of person to attract the right kind of people. And in addition to that, it's critical. Your business will never be bigger on the outside than you are on the inside.
Powerful. And we're going to put both those books, the YouTube channel, the website, all that stuff in the show notes. Nathan, thanks so much for coming on. Is there any other places like on social media where people can stay connected with you? Facebook, LinkedIn, where can people stay connected?
Yeah, so I just highly recommend that they subscribe to my newsletter. If they head over to the nathanbushmba.com/subscribe, I'll send them all those links so that they have all those ways to stay connected with me. They can always reach out to me through my website. My phone number's on there. It's pretty easy to get a hold of me. I got a link tree on my Facebook page. You can always schedule an appointment with me at any time. So I'm pretty accessible.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming in, man. I learned a lot. I liked how you incorporated. I can always tell a good speaker when they start to incorporate stories early on, right? Because everybody loves a good story. They don't want to be bored with getting sold or anything like that. So appreciate you sharing some of those stories, but hope you had a good time. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks again to the audience for tuning in to today's episode. Make sure you follow Nathan. Make sure you check out his book, sign up for his newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll put all of that stuff in the show notes. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. 5-star reviews, we're making a huge push for those this year, and it definitely moves the needle. And remember, authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. We'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We sure do appreciate it. Until next time, friends.